We're going to start sitting because it's, early in the new year. Don't want to be too wild from the beginning. So we sit in sukhasana, cross-leg position with a gap between the legs and the pelvis, buttock flesh drawn out and back. You can sit on blocks. Obviously, you can sit on one or two blocks. If you're sitting on blocks, then you should use a blanket underneath your shins. I love sukhasana. It's just brilliant pose straight away because we get all sorts of little massages going on. We get a gentle invitation to release the inner thighs. And we can recognize tensions and release them from the back and shoulders. And we can work into the external hip rotators with a little movement of the pelvis, or the whole trunk, in fact, moves in the pelvis with it, or is it the other way around that the pelvis is moving and the trunk's moving with that? They just move together. So hands on your shins, so you can gently pull forwards, just enough to draw the lower back a little way in and then up. And without any need for gripping or grasping or grabbing, keeping everything soft, we begin to enter into meditation, that is absorption in the interdependent experience. And that's why yoga is so great to do early in the day as well, because it's before you start generating independent conceptualizations of reality, me, you, us, them, success, failure. From the get-go, we can stay in touch and go deeper into a direct experience of interdependence. So as we're moving, we're massaging. As we're massaging, that releases body, brain, breath, and universe in terms of the way we see the universe. And hopefully, like me, you could find quite a lot of release just sitting in sukhasana. That is on the premise that we understand what is happening in yoga, which is a movement from an independent experience to an interdependent experience, which negates clinging. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, right hand on the floor behind you, left hand crosses over both legs. And so we know from Jainism and from Patanjali's yoga that a very important part or focus that we can have is on aparigraha, meaning not grasping. So in a twist, it's a very, very useful discipline to focus on elements such as the spine, sitting directly between the sitting bones, to discipline ourselves, to not turn in such a way that usurps that. And that usually slows the turn right down. And it slows or takes some fuel out of the upadana, which actually literally means fuel, but is often translated as reaching out. It just slows that reaching out so that we slow down to the pace of the way things are. Most of us are conditioned to be reaching out a little bit ahead of the way things are, or sometimes reaching back behind the way things are. Lift and turn and keep lifting and turning all the way around the other way. Don't hold the breath. Relax the jaw. Relax the bum. And discipline, tapas. Discipline yourself to feel the spine between the sitting bones, which is a limitation that helps us to be free of impatience. So keep the jaw soft, the eyes soft, throat soft, the brain soft. Turn back to center when you're ready. Take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 deep breaths there. And simply, once you've taken a few deep breaths and settled, this is a brainwave altering subject, so we can feel that happening, I think. We can then change the cross of our legs. So the other leg is in front. Gap between the legs and the pelvis, you can sit on no blocks, 1 block, 2 blocks. If you're on 2 blocks, just to remind you, a blanket should be taken underneath the shins. Your eyes can be closed if you want. And meditation is simply absorption or reabsorption of that which is sort of broken off from the whole, conceptually broken off from the whole, which we call me, myself, and I, like splintered off. Returning back to the whole. It hasn't actually ever left, and that's, in a sense, the problem. Because if you fracture off a separate self from the whole, then you're never synced up with the fundamental reality, which is there is no fractured self separate to the whole. Everything's interdependent. And so when we start to experience that in sukhasana through movement, which we can do now, moving left, moving right, circling the pelvis and the spine with it, or the spine and the pelvis with it, but not in ways that are unnatural or contrived, but in ways that are massaging us back into the whole, into the interdependent experience. So we're massaging this upadana, this reaching out tendency, softening its grasp, its tendency to reach out, which fuels, as I say, upadana is often understood as fuel. It fuels this sort of cycle of uncertainty and grasping. So as we let the particle return to the wave, as it were, then spontaneity arises. Spontaneity is a word that is usually, we use a word that can be translated also as natural, sahaja. Inhale when you feel soft, lift up. Exhale, right hand on the floor, left hand crosses over both legs. Again, this level of discipline, which is difficult for anyone conditioned into reaching out, which is very much all of us, isn't it? Our society, you know, our psychology is part of our society. It's not personal. And our society definitely conditions reaching out, and quite possibly many other societies have done that too, aspiring for this or aspiring for that, material things or status-based things, or conceptual, you know, reaching for conceptual ideas that people agree to and then become social convention. So discipline to feel the spine between the sitting bones. If you've got any restlessness about you, which, you know, most of us do, then it's a good challenge. It's a really good challenge. And turn back and go round the other way, similarly. Keep passive in the jaw. And again, limit yourself by giving yourself a focus, a discipline. In this case, that can be focusing on the spine sat between the sitting bones, not distorting towards the left or the right sitting bone, but sat between them. And I feel grateful because it helps to isolate that part of oneself that is, as it were, ahead, rushing ahead. One doesn't even know sometimes that it's there until you put this limitation, these kinds of limitations. We can also look at rib length, left and right sides of the ribs, and investigate relative equality, which again is a massive challenge. I mean, you could lose the whole class in a positive way on just this Parivrita Sukhasana. But we're not going to. We're going to come back to center. And we're going to come down to laying on our backs. Now, I've got a blanket underneath me because it's the new year and I want luxury. I want you to have luxury too. So make sure you've got something soft underneath you. for extra luxury. And straight away, if you're laying on a blanket, or maybe you've got a carpet, if you're doing it at home anyway, there's this invitation to release. Very simple. Very simple. So releasing is settling, that's all, really. Just settling. And it's something that's not driven, it's natural, it's sahaja. But our conditioning says, I should be doing something, even I should be relaxing. But it's the very concept of I that is the splintered off experience that causes a sense of doubt, simply because it's out of sync with the way things are. If you know, then you don't have doubt. And knowing is this reharmonizing and with the living flow, that which we had conceptualized to be a part of the living flow. So to say that more succinctly, relax. Like enjoy. So these two aspects from the Yoga Sutra, relax and enjoy. Now lift your feet up off the floor when you're ready. Take your hands together like they're in a sort of prayer position or like a little diver. And then take your knees apart, lift your head, plunge your hands through your legs. Those of you that can, to whatever extent you can, might even want to lift the pelvis off the floor. It's definitely an abdominal crunch. But even the effort to try to lift the pelvis off will crunch the abdominals. And the purpose of a crunch is it's a samskara. And you use samskaras to release samskaras. In other words, you make an impression to challenge the impressions that are stored in the nerves. We're going to reach for the big toes, index finger, middle finger, and thumb. Make the best loop you can, and then bring your head back down. So try your best to really loop as far around as you can with your fingers, so it turns into a loop more than a hook. And then that gives that sense of mudra, that sense of being sealed or contained. And within that container, anything can happen, movements of all kinds, but they're limited, they're restrained, like this word yama, which can mean restrained in a positive sense. It's like limiting someone from kind of, being really wild and just letting the whole situation calm down, So it's a positive limitation, containment of restlessness or citta vikṣepas. Open the back of the knees if you want, a little bit, or even as much as you want. Oftentimes taking the knees to about 90 degrees can feel pretty good. But whatever works for you, if they extend beyond 90, that's fine too. But the breath is your teacher, not me, but breath. So is the breath releasing in the position you're in? Sometimes having the knees more bent or more extended will condition that release. Okay. Now keep both legs in the air, but bring your hands both over to one and push that leg to whatever extent you can down towards the floor with the sole of the foot facing up. Don't hold the breath. Breathe through your nose if you can. Remember, the whole reason we're using the body is using it as a tool to funnel us back to integration, to this feeling of interdependence. So that's the whole purpose. People get very confused with yoga and think yoga is the poses, and then they try to think, well, if I do more, if I stretch more, if I strengthen more, if I move more quickly, do more of the poses. But that's confusing the pose for the yoga. You use the pose as a way back into interdependence. That's what it's for. When you've spent a bit of time on that, you can probably guess the next part of the class, which is keep that leg up and take hold of the other. And again, so, you enter into a kaliko dharma, timelessness, when you understand, when you remember, when you recollect that the poses are a sort of funnel to stream us back through the pose into interdependence, the origin state, the mother field. In which it's very apparent that that which we had claimed as me, myself, and I independently previously is, in fact, part of a field of change, a kaleidoscopic field of change. That's both internal and external. And there's nothing that we can look at that isn't part of that field. Thoughts, memories, ideas, trees, mountains, civilizations. Okay, now go to both feet simultaneously, holding the little toe side. Take the deepest breaths that you need. Play with it without thinking or trying to sort of superimpose anything on yourself. Let it flow. So it may be that the legs straighten a bit. It may be that you want to, or that the pose wants to push down on one side again or the other. It's not about memory. It's not about opinion. It's about breath. Okay, well done. Slow and calm. Release when you're ready. Pop your feet down on the floor. Pop your hands underneath your head, fingers interlaced. I'd love it if we all took 3 or 4 deep breaths now. And we, really can feel that the breath is a very, very powerful thing. So taking deep breaths isn't just something that's like doing nothing. It's doing a lot physiologically, anatomically, neurologically. So you can feel how it stretches the intercostal muscles, how it helps to time the firing off stages of each muscle in its causal chain of taking an in-breath or an out-breath. And how it alters the mind and the nerves as well. Now we're going to lift up the feet, lower back nice and soft into your blanket or carpet or wherever you are. Open the angle at the back of the knees to 90 degrees, please. Lift up your head, breathe through your nose. Meditate means absorb the particle back into the field, but nobody's doing that. It's much more like just falling into a hug with someone you love, or a kiss on the cheek from someone you love, or the sun in the early spring. I haven't quite got there yet, but in the early spring, the sun sometimes kisses one's face and it's really blissful. It's not too much, it's just right, So it's that's what meditation is. Now, we're going to turn in this direction towards me, opposite elbow and opposite knee towards each other. They don't obviously have to reach. It's just a direction of travel. And then same on the other side. Breathing without holding the breath. The hands don't have to be static, and they can move if it's more comfortable for the neck. One more time on each side, but with a variation. The variation is to raise the opposite leg and descend it 3 times, but meditate still. Don't let this turn into an exercise class. It's a meditation class. So absorb in the interdependence of the experience. Obviously, the other side when you're ready. So keep the lower back intimate with the floor. So once you've done the 3, you'll return to the floor. And once your head's returned, then we'll let the feet come down and the breath deepen. So again, don't underestimate the power of a few deep breaths. You know, they also are indicative of surrender. With the feet about hip width apart and a little way, not too far away from the bum, just 2 or 3 inches, the legs are going to fall down to one side very, very informally. So nothing, nothing particular, apart from your role is surrender. But what you're surrendering is you, so you can't do the surrender. It's like, I must surrender, and then you're trying to make something that's on the outside of you, that's a concept, or it is you that is surrendered. So that's total. That's like just falling into love, or just falling into it. Up the legs come, and obviously you might want to scoot the buttocks under before doing the other side, and then just letting the legs fall similarly to the other side. Breathing through your nose if you can. Jaw soft, eyes soft. So surrender to the whole of the now, isn't that? So we quite understandably particularize. That's a natural thing to do. It has an evolutionary function to focus on this, to rarefy something out of our experience and particularly focus on it. That's normal and natural. But it's not the way things are at their fundamental level. The way things are at their fundamental level is a kaleidoscopic field of interdependence. Bring your legs back up. When you're ready, scoot the buttocks under, take a deep breath, bring your feet quite close to your bum, and so that you can lift your bum up when you feel ready to. So go ahead. Hands are still underneath the head, by the way. And when you lift your bum, you can do whatever's helpful. So it doesn't have to lift very high. It can lift high, but the point is we don't want the lower back to be tense. So shaking, tilting, swaying, bouncing, moving the pelvis in multifarious ways, and to loosen it, to loosen the back, so that when the back does lift, there's integration, psychologically, physiologically, respiratorily, integration. So this is using the pose to return to the mother field. The mother keystrom. And once you understand that yoga is that, using movement to return to the mother field, then each pose becomes a portal, and it doesn't really, you step outside of time. Time is normally about getting from one place to another. And we normally think of that within a sort of chronological basis, but in terms of physics, time, all time is something designates change. That's all. Things are just changing states. That's the only way we can designate time. Okay, come down slow and calm and easeful. Release your hands from behind your head and roll over. Come up calmly from the side. Face towards the front of the room on your blanket. Keep that luxury going. Why wouldn't we? Hold the big toes, the great toe, as they're called in anatomy books usually. And again, make the best loop you can. The best loop you can. And then lean back until your feet come off the floor. And breathe through your nose if you can. Jaw soft, eyes soft. And just massage it in. So moving left, moving right, not holding the breath. And you can experiment with extending to whatever extent you want, a lot or a little. But again, it's so easy to confuse the the pose with the yoga, and then we start just thinking in very, very sort of mundane ways that have nothing really to do with yoga, about more, if I'm more flexible and extend the range of my motion, if I'm stronger, then, that's doing better because the yoga is the pose. But the pose is the funnel. You use it to take the mind from independence to interdependence, direct experience. Because even though we know intellectually, there's no one who would disagree that everything is a field of change. That's not the same as direct knowing. Direct knowing changes everything. Intellectual knowing, it doesn't really change our way of living. Okay, well done. Come down calmly. And we're going to come straight into Adho Mukha Svanasana. So that involves moving our blanket and coming straight into the pose, into the downward facing dog position. The first thing to check, and to really check, is that your fingers, your little fingers, are equidistant from the sides of the mat. So you should check and really check that little fingers are equidistant, same distance from the side of the mat as each other. And the middle finger should face forwards. Stretch the aponeurosis, which is a flattening of the muscle tendons that forms this sort of webbing across the palms. Stretch it by stretching the four corners of each palm. Imagine the palms like a sort of square with four corners. And you can feel that webbed tissue across the palms of the hands. Stretch it, broaden it, massage it through movement so your contact meditatively, absorbedly deepens. The deeper your contact with the palms is with the mat, the more energy that you invest is rebounded, as we want it to, up the arms. So as you press the hands, as you meditate the palms into the floor, extend the arms up. Of course, we should check that the feet are also equidistant from the sides of the mat. Once you start stretching the arms, hopefully you can look back and you can see your feet, and you can check that. Stretch up through your armpits, through your ribs, to your groins, through the front of the body. And the more you stretch up through the front of the body, the more the back of the body can release, not least the neck. So we're not letting the head come down through collapse. No, it's a stretch up, dynamic and repeated again and again. So go up through the ribs, through to the groins, through the armpits. Of course, regarding the stretch and the calcaneus tendons, one can massage into that by bending and extending, bring a bit more fluidity. Well done, everyone. Bring your shoulders forward. You might want to take your hands a little wider, depending on the width of your collarbones. Bring your shoulders forwards. You can do this on your forearms if the wrists are particularly problematic, although this is a way that can help avoid problematic sensations in the wrists, or at least bring them back to function. So just breathe into it. Jaw soft, eyes soft, throat soft. Okay, knees down to the floor. Draw a deep breath when you feel ready. Or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. Let's take the foot that's furthest away from me, bring it forwards into the place of the hand that's furthest away from me. I quite like keeping my back toes tucked under because I can then lift my back knee and play back and forth with the stretch. So that can help to further hydrate the groins, the quadriceps, and so on. But also it can help you position your back knee in better and better positions, meditatively speaking. So the knee, every time you lift and land the knee, you might feel that you're really coming closer to vibrating at the same frequency as reality itself. So, this is, we can talk about this in terms of brainwave frequencies. But certain brainwave frequencies, we can also talk about being the same vibration as reality itself. Huh? Now, when you're ready, if you want to, you can climb up on your leg with your hands. Breathe through your nose if you can. Focus on the inner groin of the back leg. And to turn independence into interdependence, we focus on a rich sensation and we give to it. Just 2 stepping stones. Focus on the inner groin of the back leg, stretch there and give to it. It's the giving to it that completes the practice that takes us over into the interdependent. If you want, you can raise the arms as well. That's optional. Not everyone will want to. If you do raise the arms, make sure the roots of the neck are not tense. So adjust your head position in any way that's helpful in that sense. Very good. Coming back to hands and knees as calmly as you can. Breathe easy. Let the pelvis move left, right, forwards, backwards. So it's, again, spontaneous. So spontaneous, it's just something, like dancing. If you get into dancing, after a while, it becomes spontaneous. Other foot forwards when you're ready. Similarly, taking the place of the hand. The back knee can lift and stretch back. Maybe several times. For me, it's several times, because each time I lift, and there's a little bit more refinement. The mind has come into one stream. It's been streamed every time a little more together, more in line with the way things are, instead of this kind of scatteredness that we otherwise commonly experience, where our minds are divided between many, many things. It comes together and just becomes the spontaneous kaleidoscopic flow of the now. Climb up if you want onto your leg. If it doesn't feel comfortable, you can always go back to your hands on the floor and adjust the back knee. Some people do find that their knee feels better without the toes tucked under, so that's okay too. The option to raise the arms if you want, and to keep the tummy toned. And again, to cross over, you have to take 2 steps. You need a rich experience of any kind. In this case, in yoga, it tends to be stretches or muscular sensations of activity. And you need to give to those. Yeah. Right? So giving is usually done through the breath. So feel that stretch in the inner groin and give to it. That's how the mind uses the body, as it were, or consciousness uses the body to reabsorb itself in its fundamental field. Okay, well done all. Come down as far as you can. Back to hands and knees. And then take the first knee forwards directly behind its own wrist. The foot moves diagonally across the body, and you stretch back your other leg in your own time. For most people, coming down to the forearms is going to be pretty good, even lowering the head lower than that if you wanted to. And you can massage it in the same sort of way that you'd use a clean cloth to mop up freshly spilt water. By moving the cloth across the water, gradually the water draws into the cloth until there's not a trace of the water left, and there's not a part of the cloth that isn't suffused or permeated by water. So similarly, as you move Let that be a process of gentle absorption. So two signals, discordant signals, often are felt, and that's what we feel as resistance, and that is one signal from the nerves to the muscles that is habituation. If something is left in the nerves that tells the muscles to do this or that, a sense of projection, a sense of reaching out. And then the other is the request from the pose to the muscles, asking the muscles to release here and there. And getting those two vibrations, those two frequencies to vibrate at the same level is absorption. And it essentially means that what the nerves were holding begins to give itself to the vibration of the now, of the pose. And in that way, the nerves become cleansed or emptied. Okay, coming up a little way so that you can tuck your back toes under and bring your back knee forwards, come back to hands and knees, catch your breath. Maybe 2 or 3 deep breaths. You might want to wag your tail or move your pelvis in any way that's sort of beyond self, beyond thinking. And then when you're ready, the other knee goes forward directly behind the thumb wrist. The foot moves diagonally across the body and you stretch back in your own time. Again, coming down to elbows. Breathing through the nose if you can. And massaging it in, like mopping up clean, freshly spilled water with a clean cloth. Until they are as one. And here we're getting the nerves, the muscles, and the pose to be as one. And it effectively empties the nerves of presumption and assumption and bias and expectation. So the catchphrase of Baden-Powell and the scouting movement is "be prepared." I remember it from when I was in the Scouts for a very short period of time. Be prepared. But we should really make that a full sentence, and we should say, be prepared by being empty or emptying out. So, the best way to be prepared for anything is to be empty rather than to be obscured by views and opinions and presumptions. To be available, you could say. Okay, tuck the back toes, bring the back knee forwards. Come back onto hands and knees. Allow 2 or 3 deep breaths and a bit more pelvic, natural swaying movement. And when you feel ready, take the hand that's furthest away from me and plunge it underneath your body towards me, palm up, and bring your head down. Extend your other arm out to fingertips. Breathe through your nose if you can. Don't hold the breath. Massage in, so feel the deltoid muscle that caps the shoulder. And massage into it, breathe into it, surrender to it. It's a wonderful pose that opens the door to the infinite. There's a variation some people like to take as well, which is to retract the extended arm and to push into it and to raise up your leg. It's really quite a different sensation. Neither better nor worse, just different. So you might find the first station is more than absorbing enough. Some people even like to try this relatively daredevil event of bending the leg and reaching slowly. That's what I would say is the skill of this, is to move slowly. And some people might even open the angle at the back of the knee a little. It does need to be very, very slow. Whichever variation you took will come out of the pose and back to hands and knees. Take a breath or two. So some deep breaths, freedom. You kind of feel your energy moving any way it wants. It can be dynamic or slow. When you're ready, the other arm goes underneath, palm up, similarly. Extending out to fingertips. Breathing through the nose without holding your breath. Jaw soft, eyes soft. It's very, very natural. It's easy, sukha. It's the nature of yoga. It should be easy, sukha, in the way we approach it. So we're not making effort in the sort of sense that there's an effortor, but we're sort of riding a wave. If you want, you can try the one or two of the other variations by retracting the extended arm and raising the leg up. That's optional. Or even the daredevil third option, which would be, if you wanted to bend that leg in the air and reach for the foot, but that's oftentimes a step too far. But yeah, my advice is shanai, shanai, slowly, slowly. Okay, whichever station you chose, coming out, back to hands and knees, back to Adho Mukha Svanasana, the downward facing dog, and we can remind ourselves of some of the points that we looked at before, that is full, complete contact with the palms and the mat as a meditation. Energy up through the back in waves, reiterative waves. And perhaps you could experiment with that extension through the front of the body, through the armpits, through the ribs, to the groins. So as you extend, or as there's that waves of extension up and through, relative to that, the back of the body, or the muscles either side of the spinal column, release. But it's relative, always relative to the amount of dynamic up energy, pulling us up almost. Almost feels like we're being pulled up by the top of the thighs. Obviously, any padding of the heels and whatever else you need to do, you can. Okay, well done. Come down, extend your legs out. Draw the butterfly out and back. Obviously, you can sit on a block if you need to. So the butterfly is drawn out and back. Dandasana, so drag the hands back to stretch the chest. Head up in line with the spine. Breathing, if you can, through your nose. It's not stationary. We're not static. But instead, this spontaneous movement. It's not done by anybody. It's an expression. It's a karana. It's a karana, an expression. So trying or not trying, that's neither of those, because they both involve somebody who's trying or somebody who's not trying. But it's much more like giving. For example, broadening across the balls of the feet and across the heels, from big toe side to little toe side, is not at all mechanistic. It's more like a Buddha's smile. Gently comes from the inside and moves across the face of a Buddha as he, or a Buddha as she, moves into open absorption. Similarly, across the feet, let it be like a meditative smile. And that's a project, isn't it? And, if you tune in on that project, you can add to it the project of ranging around. So that means moving your pelvis to find opportunities to lift or to make space for a lift in the back. So in these ways, Dandasana is a gateway to the infinite, or the Ananta, which is what Patanjali says we should be focused on as we practice Yogasana. Obviously, arm length makes a difference. You've got longer arms, you might need to bend the elbows. I know a couple of students who've got very long arms that even need to bring their hands behind the buttocks and bend their elbows. But we should all feel increasing breadth across the collarbones, through to the arm bones. And we might feel, there's some inequalities between the sides. And that's what this is partly addressing. So we could definitely, it's just an entry point into Dandasana. We're going to release nice and calm and easy. We're going to place our hands on the floor behind us, fingers facing forward. So the hands are about a block width behind the bum, about the width of a regular standard yoga block. And the fingers face forwards. And usually this is great. You can really get a lot out of drawing the tummy in, lifting the chest up, and focusing on the soft tissue connection between the chest and the arms. And perhaps you can even sink your head up with the lift of the chest. And it will identify all sorts of misalignments that come into consciousness and are able to begin the process of realignment. You might feel it even between the shoulder blades in the rhomboids. Releasing back down and out. We're going to stay on the back of the heels until further notice. We're going to lift the pelvis up and pull the chest over. Now, if you need to do this with your fingers pointing out, you could do that if you prefer. So as I say, we're staying on the back of the heels until further notice. We're going to focus on tummy drawn in and chest pulled over. And as that action happens and the head moves alongside that action, then the feet can begin to stretch towards the floor as the chest moves the opposite way. Okay. It's early in the new year for some people, so we'll come down and rest. We're going to come down to our backs next. Welcome news. We're going to put some support under our heads. So a yoga block or a blanket or a towel. Towels are invaluable pieces of equipment, both for intergalactic hitchhikers, but also for yogins, very, very useful. Raise up one leg. You choose, free for all right now. Any leg, we're going to do the other, so don't worry. And we're going to move the foot between dorsal and plantar flexion. We're going to do things like scrunching and unscrunching the toes. We're just moving to create a sense of relaxed flow. Relaxed flow. So breathing easy, relaxed flow. And once things are flowing, we're going to reach for the calf muscles, the gastrocnemius. Now, at the top of the calf muscles, it divides into two separate heads. So at that point, nearer the knee, you can press your fingers into the middle point of the back of the calf, alternatively. So one hand and then the other pressing, and you can move up and down a little. If you go quite far towards the foot, then those two heads turn into one tendon. So you'll have to turn that then into cupping if you reach that low, the whole of the tendon with one hand and then the other. So you're moving between cupping by the foot and then pressing into the middle, closer to the middle of the leg and then towards the knee. So it's alternative pressing like that, just creating flow, cupping, pressing, intuitively, breathing. Okay, well done. Release if you're ready. Once you discover the real meaning of the yoga postures, each pose becomes a complete journey you could spend a long time in. Just raise the other leg. Similarly, pressing into the center line in the between the two heads of the gastrocnemius. So as the muscle comes up towards the knee, it divides further and further into two heads that cross over the back of the knee and help with knee flexion. But then, as you get towards the foot, those two heads become one tendon shared with the soleus deeper down. So again, just to remind us that if you do reach closer to the foot, then you're using each hand individually to cup right the way around the tendon. Whereas higher up, you press into the middle of the two muscle heads. It's very, very intuitive, very natural. Move in ways that are, circulating energy, blood, lymph, prana, vayu. Great. And then finally, release. Take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 deep breaths. Tendons soft, so around the temples relaxed, around the jaw, the muscle tendons across into the temple area from the jaw can relax. Raise up one leg, doesn't matter which one. Again, dorsal and plantar flex the foot, circle and half circle, scrunch and unscrunch, anything that feels good. And then once life has come into the leg, turn the heel in and toes out, cross that leg over the other. Lift the foot that's on the floor, plunge through the gap, interlace. And a great opportunity for a roll about. So no holding of the breath, just rolling in ways that are beyond tatparam. Moving in ways that are indicative of surrender. We're turning a closed fist into an open palm. That's what yoga is. Turning a closed fist into an open palm. Nice and easy release if you're ready. Both feet back to the floor. Take a deep breath or two. So all about the breath. Then raise up your other leg when you're ready. Dorsiplantar, dorsiplantar. Circle, half circle, scrunch, unscrunch. Bringing life, bringing flow, circulating prana, increasing hyaluronic acid quantities within the fascia. And then heel in, toes out, cross that leg over the other, pick up the foot that's on the floor, plunge through the gap, interlace, round your far shin or back thigh, or use a belt. And then a bit of rolling around. Looking for sensations that are beyond, that is beyond descriptives other than expressive flows. So a poet is someone who has expressive flows, like a real poet, I mean, like a really beautiful poet, expressive flows. So yoga is like poetry. Okay, nice, easy release. When you're ready, breathing through the nose if you can, taking 2 or 3 or 4 deep, natural breaths. We're going to roll over just for a moment or two, come up from the side. We're going to sit in Siddhasana or a comfortable position of your choice. So I'm sitting, just because it was the nearest thing to me, on a regular block with a short end facing forwards. You could be on 2 regular blocks with the short end facing forwards, or you can be in a different position if you find Siddhasana problematic. Siddhasana usually finds the heels line up with each other and the midline of the body in various instantiations. We're just going to send 3 bija mantras up through the central channel, the mantra of Om. And so when you take your breath in a moment, imagine you're sending the energy right the way down to the pelvic floor and that the Om pushes up through the central channel and out of the crown of the head as you chant and therefore breathe out. So let's do 3 of those. Let's take the first one by deeply breathing into the pelvic floor. So inhale. Again, when you're ready. And last one, really deep down to the pelvic floor. That. You take a deep breath in. Sigh like exhale, drop the shoulders. Let the bum relax. We're going to luxuriate in a 63-second shavasana. Obviously, if you're practicing at home, you might lay longer. But 63 seconds can do it. So we're going to lay on our backs and make sure we're comfortable and warm. Don't rush because the 63 seconds doesn't start until you're down. We can watch this class as the year develops from having it have the light on, and as time goes by, we won't have to have the lights on. I'll turn them off for now. The day is dawning. Just let the whole body, every single cell, say yes, just for a few moments. Every single cell says yes. And that is openness. And it is that openness that some traditions call Shiva, a word that translates to blessing. Gently move your toes and your fingers. Take investigative stretches. And when you feel ready enough to bend the legs, then go ahead and do just that. Bending the legs. Roll over onto your side facing away from this side of the room. And then roll back towards this side of the room when you feel ready. Bring yourself up from the side. And hands to prayer. May any benefit that we've gained in our acting in this way go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. Om. Thank you very much for coming along. Happy New Year. Thanks, Zoomers, as well, very, very much for coming along. Great to see you. Happy New Year. Love and peace. See you soon. Loads of love. Love you guys. See you soon. Ciao.